Hello, everyone. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the mightiest hero in your imagination. Is it a titan clad in gleaming armor, a bastion of unwavering courage, a force of nature against chaos? Now shatter that image, replace it with something entirely, unbelievably different. Picture that same hero shrouded in a flowing jewel-encrusted bridal gown. A delicate veil obscures it. They sit awkwardly at a boisterous feast, trying desperately to embody demure grace, their colossal frames straining against the silken fabric, absurd, sacrilegious perhaps, yet this isn't some fever dream or a comedic sketch. This is a pivotal, harrowing chapter ripped straight from the sagas of Norse mythology. A legend so audacious, so utterly unbelievable, it peels back the layers of heroism and dives headfirst into the profound depths of sacrifice, cunning, and the unthinkable lengths to which even a god will go to reclaim what is irrevocably his. Forget the thunderous roar, the shining armor, the unquestionable might. Today, we plunge into the most profoundly humiliating, yet arguably most triumphant moment in the storied life of Thor, the very god of thunder himself. A moment that stripped him bare of his perceived invincibility, challenged his very identity to its core, and forced him to embrace a role so unthinkable, so utterly antithetical to his warrior spirit. It would make even the most hardened J-fan. This isn't merely a tale about a lost hammer, it is a sprawling saga about a god adorned as a bride, and the desperate, dangerous, almost farcical game he played to safeguard Asgard's future. The cosmic tapestry of the Nine Realms, a breathtaking and brutal mosaic of existence, hung in a delicate, precarious balance. Its threads were woven from the raw might of gods, the insidious machinations of giants, and the ceaseless, churning entropy of creation itself. At the vibrant, pulsating heart of this grand design lay Asgard, the resplendent golden realm. It was protected, not by walls of mere stone or ramparts of gilded iron, but by the indomitable, unyielding will of its inhabitants, and above all by the earth-shattering, thunderous might of its greatest champion. Thor, son of Odin, his very presence was a bulwark against encroaching chaos, his name a rallying cry that echoed across battlefields, and his weapon, Mjolnir. It was a pulsating symbol of absolute, unyielding power, a force of nature given form, forged in the heart of a dying star, imbued with the magic of the dwarfs. Mjolnir was an extension of Thor himself, a conduit for his righteous wrath, a key to his dominion over the tempestuous skies. Without Mjolnir, Thor was a warrior disarmed, his thunder silenced, and on one chilling, fateful morning, that unthinkable reality violently shattered the fragile peace of Asgard. The air in the golden halls of Asgard, usually vibrant with boisterous laughter and the clinking of mead horns, was thick with a silence that spoke of profound dread. It was not the reverent hush of a sacred ceremony, but the unsettling, suffocating quiet of an impending catastrophe. Thor, who usually greeted the dawn with a robust bellow, and the familiar, comforting weight of Mjolnir beside him, awoke to an utterly hollow space. A chilling, impossible void where the most potent weapon in the cosmos should have rested. Panic, a sensation rarely, if ever, known to the formidable god of thunder, began to coil in his gut, a cold, constricting serpent of fear. His eyes, usually alight with the fierce spark of battle, lust or the amiable twinkle of good cheer, now held a bewildered terror, a dawning horror. He searched frantically, desperately, tearing through his chambers with a desperate energy, his mighty hand reaching, grasping, finding only empty air where the polished, rune-etched handle of his beloved hammer should have been. Mjolnir was gone, vanished. The news ripped through Asgard like a venomous serpent, its poison swiftly spreading, infecting the hearts of gods and goddesses alike with a pervasive anxiety. Odin, the All-Father, whose singular eye encompassed the wisdom of ages, felt a tremor shake the very roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree itself. The loss of Mjolnir was not merely a personal affront to Thor, a blow to his pride. It was a cosmic catastrophe, a gaping breach in the very defenses of the Nine Realms. Without Mjolnir, Thor's immense power was severely curtailed, his thunder silenced, his role as guardian weakened to a perilous degree. And if Asgard, the resplendent seat of the Aesir, could be so easily infiltrated, its most potent artifacts stolen with impunity, what hope did the other, more vulnerable realms have against the encroaching, hungry chaos of Jotunheim, the frigid, treacherous land of the giants? A palpable pall descended upon Asgard. The usual bravado and boisterous jests of the gods faded, replaced by grim faces etched with concern and hushed whispers laden with foreboding. Even Loki, the trickster god Thor's adopted brother and eternal foil, seemed genuinely disturbed by the unprecedented theft. While he often reveled in his own mischievous schemes and the delightful chaos they wrought, even he understood the dire gravity of this particular situation. This was no petty prank, no harmless jape designed to annoy. This was a prelude to potential war, a daring, insolent challenge hurled directly at the heart of Asgard from an unseen, but clearly formidable, enemy. Loki, ever the pragmatist with a silver tongue, a mind sharper than any dwarf, forged blade, and a peerless talent for uncovering hidden truths, was swiftly dispatched to discover the thief. His usual mischievous grin was replaced by a look of focused cunning, a rare sight that usually boded ill for someone somewhere in the cosmos. Loki, ever resourceful, ever drawn to the shadowy corners of intrigue, knew instinctively where to begin his search. Such a brazen, audacious act of theft, one so contemptuous of Asgardian might, could only originate from one place: Jotunheim, the desolate, frigid, and utterly treacherous land of the frost giants, the eternal, implacable adversaries of the Aesir. He donned his magnificent cloak of falcon feathers, a magical gift from the goddess Freya, and soared into the bitter, biting winds of the northern wastes. His keen eyes, like a predator's, scanned the desolate, frozen landscapes, while his even keener mind sifted through the chilling whispers carried on the icy gusts, piecing together the fragmented shadows of rumor. It wasn't long, remarkably so, before his perilous journey led him to the formidable ice-hewn stronghold of Thrym, the king of the frost giants. Thrym, a colossal brute of immense stature, with a laugh that sounded like grinding glaciers and a heart colder than the deepest. Most ancient ice floes, was in a rare state of gleeful, almost manic swagger. As Loki, ever the master of disguise, approached the giant king's domain, cloaked as a humble, unassuming traveler, he saw it, the unmistakable, shimmering glow of immense power, radiating subtly but unmistakably from within Thrym's cavernous throne room. And then the boast that followed, delivered with unparalleled arrogance, confirmed all of Asgard's worst fears. "So you seek Mjolnir, little Aesir?" Thrym bellowed, his voice echoing, reverberating through the icy, echoing halls like a rockslide. "It lies buried 8 miles deep beneath the impenetrable rocks of Jotunheim, safe from the pathetic grasp of your cowering thunder god." A chill, colder than any frostbite, ran down Loki's spine, a shiver that had nothing to do with the freezing air. But Thrym's terms for its return, delivered with a smug, almost sadistic satisfaction, were about to plunge Asgard into an abyss of profound, unspeakable humiliation. "Return it?" Thrym scoffed, a sneer twisting his gargantuan, ice-crusted features into a grotesque mask of disdain. "A mere trifle of a trade, Aesir. Bring me Freya, the most dazzlingly beautiful of goddesses, as my rightful bride. Let her warm my desolate, icy halls. Let her be queen of Jotunheim, and Mjolnir shall be returned to its rightful, though utterly unworthy, owner." The demand hung in the frigid air, a cruel, impossible ultimatum. A poisoned chalice. Freya, the exquisite goddess of love, beauty, to surrender her to Thrym, a repulsive, brutish giant, would be an unforgivable insult, a profound, eternal dishonor to all of Asgard, a stain on their very essence. It was a price no god could ever fathom paying, yet a prize no god could afford to refuse to reclaim. Loki returned to Asgard, the crushing weight of Thrym's monstrous demand pressing heavily upon him, a burden almost too great to bear. The assembled gods, usually so boisterous and filled with their own divine importance, listened in stunned, horrified silence as he relayed the giant's insolent terms. The golden halls, usually vibrant with life, resonating with the sounds of revelry and strategy, fell into a sepulchral hush, thick with unspoken dread. Freya herself, upon hearing the monstrous, blasphemous proposal, let out a piercing shriek that rattled the very foundations of the realm, a sound of pure outrage and disgust. Her eyes, usually luminous and serene, flashed with righteous fury, her face typically radiant with grace, contorted into a mask of pure loathing. "Never," she declared, her voice trembling with a potent cocktail of fear and defiance. "I would sooner be swallowed whole by the abyssal maw of hell herself than consent to wed that wretched, vile beast." Her defiance was absolute, righteous, and utterly unyielding. No god, not even Odin, would dare force her into such an abhorrent, debasing union. The dilemma was agonizing, a Gordian knot of impossible choices. To deny Thrym's demand was to condemn Asgard to an uncertain, perilous future without its primary defender, an open invitation for the encroaching chaos of Jotunheim to reign unchecked. To surrender Freya, their beloved goddess, was an unthinkable act of betrayal, a profound moral capitulation that would forever stain their honor, a scar on their collective soul. Desperation, cold and insidious, began to creep into the hearts of even the bravest, most stoic among them. What now? How could they possibly reclaim Mjolnir without sacrificing one of their own, one of their most cherished and vital members? The air grew thick with unspoken dread, with the gnawing, pervasive fear that no viable solution existed, that they were irrevocably trapped between two unspeakable evils, a choice between the inferno and the deep blue sea. It was in this crucible of despair, this moment of profound uncertainty, that Loki, ever the architect of unconventional, often outrageous solutions, a master of misdirection, a god whose mind was a labyrinth of shadows and light, stepped forward. A slow, almost imperceptible, mischievous smile began to spread across his face, a smile that promised both a cunning salvation and a profound, perhaps even unforgettable, humiliation for someone. The other gods watched him, a complex mixture of desperate hope and profound trepidation in their eyes, for Loki's intricate schemes, while often undeniably effective, invariably came with a heavy, "We cannot give Freya," Loki stated, his voice calm, almost soothing, yet edged with an unmistakable, unsettling glint of mischief. "But what if we merely pretend Fey to give Thrym his bride?" A collective, stunned gasp rippled through the assembled Aesir. Odin, ever wise, ever perceptive, narrowed his singular, all-seeing eye, sensing the dangerous, audacious path. Loki was now treading. Thor, still reeling from the debilitating loss of his hammer, looked at his adoptive brother with a bewildering mixture of burgeoning hope and rapidly escalating suspicion. "Pretend?" Thor rumbled, his brow furrowed in confusion, a storm cloud gathering on his face. "How, pray tell, do you pretend to give a bride to a giant king, brother?" Loki's smile widened, revealing a flash of his perfectly white, almost predatory teeth. "We send him a bride, yes, but not Freya. We send him Thor." The words hung in the air, audacious, shocking, almost blasphemous in their sheer audacity. For a single, stretched beat, silence, a profound, stunned, disbelieving silence. Then a sudden, cacophonous eruption of gasps, exclamations, and outright, unrestrained laughter. Even the most stoic and battle-hardened gods could not contain their mirth at the sheer, mind-boggling absurdity of the proposition. Thor, the mighty Thor, the very epitome of masculine power in a wedding dress. The image was so preposterous, so utterly against his very nature, his fundamental identity, it was beyond the realm of belief. It was almost too much for the divine mind to comprehend. Thor's face, usually ruddy with the glow of health and the exhilaration of battle, lust turned a shade of crimson that rivaled a sunset over the golden peaks of Asgard. His usually booming voice, capable of shaking mountains, was reduced to an incredulous, sputtering stammer. "Me dresses Freya, Loki by the sacred runes. Have you finally, truly lost your mind? I am Thor, the slayer of countless giants. I wield Mjolnir. I do not wear dresses. This is an outrage." His rage was magnificent, a contained storm threatening to break free and lay waste to the hall. The very thought alone was an unbearable assault on his honor, his inherent masculinity, his very identity as a warrior god. The humiliation was a tangible, burning sensation. But Loki, ever the master of insidious persuasion, ever adept at pressing his advantage, pressed his point with relentless precision. "Brother," he began, his tone soothing, almost serpentine, yet undeniably laced with a subtle, chilling threat. "Do you truly prefer to lose Mjolnir forever, to be forever disarmed, forever diminished? To see Asgard vulnerable, exposed to the ravages of Jotunheim, simply because you are too proud to wear a veil? Think, Thor, truly think of the alternative. Think of the fey-true, fey-shame that would endure for all eternity. This is not about your petty pride, brother. This is about absolute, undeniable necessity. This is about the very survival of Asgard. This is above all else Heimdall, the ever-vigilant, ever-watchful sentinel of the Bifrost, whose legendary senses pierced through all realms, whose gaze could discern a single blade of grass growing in the furthest reaches of the cosmos, stepped forward. His voice was grave, resonant with ancient wisdom and an unshakable conviction. "Loki speaks a truth, Thor. Hard though it may be to swallow, bitter though it may taste. Without Mjolnir, the frost giants will not merely grow bolder. They will rise in a tide of conquest, their icy grip tightening on the 9 realms. Ragnar fake itself, the twilight of the gods, may well be hastened by your inaction. Your humiliation, Thor, however great, however profound, is a small necessary price to pay for the ultimate safety and continued existence of all." The words of the stoic Heimdall, usually so measured and resolute, carried an undeniable weight, a finality that even Thor, in his towering fury, could not ignore. The argument shifted irrevocably from personal dignity to cosmic duty, and in the face of universal peril, what truly was one god's pride? It was a bitter, metallic pill to swallow, a crushing blow to his warrior's spirit. But the cold, stark logic was utterly irrefutable. With a groan that seemed to shake the very foundations of his being, a sound born of profound internal struggle and agonizing capitulation, Thor reluctantly agreed. The greatest, most fearsome warrior in the 9 realms would become the most reluctant. The preparations were swift, a flurry of activity, and for Thor utterly, excruciatingly mortifying. The goddesses, though largely sympathetic to his plight, could not resist a few discreet, suppressed snickers as they draped the enormous, burly god in the most elaborate bridal finery. A flowing gown, shimmering with threads of spun gold and shimmering jewels, a garment designed for the lithe, graceful form of Freya, now had to be stretched, adjusted, and cinched to accommodate Thor's mighty, unyielding frame. Bracelets, usually worn by elegant maidens, adorned his powerful, muscular wrists. A necklace of precious, glistening stones lay heavy upon his broad, battle-hardened chest, and a magnificent bridal veil, woven with the ethereal threads of starlight, was carefully, painstakingly placed over his massive head, obscuring his furious crimson face, now contorted in a mask of pure indignation. Loki, ever the consummate showman, ever enjoying the unfolding spectacle of his brother's predicament, meticulously added the final theatrical touches. He tied the long, flowing train, adjusted the sparkling girdle that threatened to snap, and even with a deliberate, mischievous twinkle in his emerald eyes, braided Thor's long golden hair with delicate ribbons. Thor stood, a veritable mountain of reluctant femininity, his powerful muscles straining visibly against the delicate, restrictive fabric, his hands clenching and unclenching, undoubtedly imagining crushing Thrym with a single, devastating blow. "Remember, brother," Loki whispered, his voice a sly, conspiratorial murmur, barely audible over Thor's suppressed grumbling. "Demure, graceful, and above all silent, unless I give you the cue. Do not, under any circumstances, utter a word of your own accord." Thor merely grunted, a sound that threatened to tear the delicate veil from his face with sheer frustration. The transformation was complete. The god of thunder was now Freya, the reluctant, fuming bride, a terrifying, albeit veiled vision of absolute fury, cloaked in an absurd beauty. The journey to Jotunheim was fraught with an almost unbearable, suffocating tension. Thor, squeezed uncomfortably into the carriage, felt every bump and jolt in the icy terrain as a fresh assault on his already battered dignity. Loki, ever the charming, deceptively soothing companion, chattered incessantly, ostensibly comforting his sister, but secretly reveling in Thor's palpable, barely contained discomfort. The desolate, frozen landscape of Jotunheim stretched before them, an endless expanse of ice and rock, a fittingly bleak and treacherous backdrop for the audacious, almost suicidal deception they were about to unleash. Every towering shadow seemed to hide a lurking, suspicious giant, every biting gust of wind a whisper of imminent discovery. The stakes were impossibly high, woven with the threads of cosmic destiny. Failure meant not only the permanent, irreversible loss of Mjolnir, but also an unspeakable, eternal dishonor for Asgard, and perhaps even a devastating, realm-shattering war that would plunge the Nine Realms into an endless winter. As their carriage, a lumbering, incongruous speck in the vast icy wilderness, approached Thrym's colossal ice-hewn stronghold, the air vibrated with the raucous, boisterous sounds of celebration. The giants, oblivious to the cunning trap being laid, were already deep into their revelry, anticipating the glorious arrival of their prized possession. The goddess Freya, Thrym himself, a brute of a king, his eyes glinting with a crude, almost animalistic excitement, stood at the entrance, his gargantuan frame silhouetted against the icy fortress, eager to greet his bride. His voice, a booming roar that seemed to crack the very ice around them, filled the frozen air. "Welcome, Freya, my beautiful queen. Come, let us feast and celebrate our glorious union." Thor, still hidden beneath the thick, suffocating veil, felt a surge of pure, unadulterated nausea. The overpowering stench of unwashed giants, a crude mixture of stale mead, raw meat, and ancient filth, assaulted his senses. The cacophony of their guttural, boisterous laughter, the sight of their crude, barbaric feasting tables, groaning under the weight of entire roasted oxen and rivers of bubbling mead, it was all a profound assault on his refined Asgardian sensibilities, and a direct, agonizing challenge to his iron-clad self-control. Loki, ever the smooth operator, the diplomat of deceit, deftly guided Thor into the enormous great hall, his hand resting gently on Thor's massive elbow, a silent, yet potent warning to maintain the fragile charade. The feast began, and immediately Thor's elaborate disguise was put to the ultimate, most unexpected test. Giants, notoriously not known for their subtlety, their table manners, or their delicate constitutions, feasted with unrestrained, primal gusto, and Thor, driven by the immense stress of the situation, the gnawing anxiety, and his own naturally prodigious, godly appetite, began to eat and eat and eat. He devoured an entire roasted ox, his veiled mouth chewing through He consumed a dozen glistening salmon, their bones picked clean, and he drank 3 entire barrels of mead, the potent liquid vanishing down his throat with alarming speed. The sheer, unbelievable quantity of food and drink consumed by the delicate Freya was, to put it mildly, astonishing, bordering on the miraculous. Thrym, his eyes narrowing to suspicious slits, watched his supposed bride with growing, uneasy suspicion by the frost giant's frozen beard. Thrym boomed, his voice rumbling through the hall, a sound of both disbelief and burgeoning irritation. "I have never, in all my long, cold years, witnessed a bride with such an utterly voracious appetite. Does Freya, the goddess of beauty, truly eat like this normally, or is this, perhaps, some ill omen, a sign of a greedy spirit?" The tension in the vast, echoing hall became palpable, a living entity. One wrong move, one single slip of the tongue, one moment of true identity revealed, and the entire elaborate deception would crumble, leading to certain horrific doom for Loki, however, was not merely ready. He was born for such moments. Quick as lightning, his intricate mind whirring with Machiavellian brilliance, he leaned in towards Thrym, his voice a conspiratorial whisper, woven with the silken threads of cunning and irresistible charm. "Ah, my most magnificent Lord Thrym, pray forgive my sister. She has not eaten for 8 long, agonizing days, consumed entirely by her ardent, overwhelming desire to finally come to Jotunheim, to be with you, her beloved. Such is the strength of her love, my lord." Thrym, a giant of immense vanity and easily flattered ego, his suspicions momentarily dulled by the honeyed words and the allure of such passionate devotion, chuckled. He bought the lie, hook, line, and sinker. Thor, under his suffocating veil, undoubtedly breathed a silent, internal sigh of relief, though his very next act would once again test the absolute limits of Loki's quick thinking and his unparalleled ingenuity. Later, as the feast continued its boisterous, drunken course, Thrym, still gazing at his supposed bride with a bewildering mixture of crude lust and persistent, nagging suspicion, attempted to steal a kiss. He leaned in, his coarse giant's hand pulling back the corner of Thor's thick veil, eager to finally behold the fabled beauty of Freya. What he saw, however, was not the gentle, radiant face of the goddess of love, but the fiery, unrestrained, utterly enraged eyes of Thor, blazing with a fury so barely contained it threatened to incinerate the hall. They were eyes that had witnessed 1,000 battles, eyes that had seen empires fall, eyes that promised swift, brutal, agonizing death to any who dared cross him. The sheer, unadulterated, primal rage in those eyes was a sight that would haunt a giant's nightmares. Thrym recoiled violently in utter shock, stumbling backward, almost tripping over his own enormous feet, a look of genuine, stark terror flashing across his brutish, ice-cold face. "By the ancient, ice-cold blood of my ancestors," he roared, his voice trembling with a primal, instinctual fear. "Why do Freya's eyes burn with such a terrible, consuming fire? They pierce like a winter storm, like the very enraged gaze of a starving wolf. What dark magic is this?" Again, the intricate deception teetered precariously on the brink of catastrophic exposure. The assembled giants exchanged nervous, suspicious glances, their celebratory mood swiftly evaporating into an uneasy apprehension. And again, Loki, ever the master of improvisation, ever the quick-witted savior, stepped forward, his expression a carefully crafted mask of concern. "My Lord Thrym," he said, his voice laced with expertly feigned worry, "my poor sister has not slept for 8 long, restless nights. So great was her longing for you, her intended. Her eyes, burning with sleepless passion, reflect only the absolute intensity of her boundless love and anticipation for your union." Thrym, ever the gullible giant, despite his immense size and supposed strength, puffed out his chest, his immense vanity once again flattered beyond measure, his ego swelling to encompass the elaborate lie, his self-love, a fatal weakness Loki, exploited with surgical precision, once again saved the day. The other giants, though still wary, still sensing something was amiss, reluctantly relaxed their guard, their suspicions temporarily quelled by Loki's masterful and utterly convincing fabrications. The tension, though never truly gone, receded for a precious few moments. The feasting, or what remained of it, continued its tumultuous, drunken course, the tension ebbing and flowing like the treacherous tides of a dangerous, storm-tossed sea. Thor, suffocating under the heavy veil, endured the crude, lewd jokes, the leering, lustful glances of the giants, the sheer, crushing indignity of it all. His powerful, calloused hands accustomed to the comforting, familiar weight of Mjolnir, now rested demurely, almost primly, in his lap trembling almost imperceptibly with a suppressed, seething rage. His mind, usually singularly focused on battle strategies and glorious combat, was now forced into a constant, exhausting vigilance, an agonizing internal struggle against his own nature. Each passing moment was an arduous test of his profound resolve, a battle fought not with thunder and lightning, but with an iron will against overwhelming humiliation. He watched his brother, Loki, effortlessly navigating the treacherous currents of giant social etiquette, spinning tales and deflecting suspicion with a casual grace that both infuriated and grudging. The sheer, undeniable necessity of the moment, the desperate gravity of Mjolnir's absence, was the only thing holding Thor's formidable volcanic fury in check. The thought of Asgard vulnerable, the thought of his hammer permanently lost, was the sole anchor preventing him from tearing the entire hall apart with his bare hands. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of unbearable pretense, the culmination of Thrym's perverse desires, the supposed sealing of their unholy, blasphemous union. Thrym, his eyes gleaming with anticipation, his enormous face split by a triumphant, crude grin, declared, his voice a booming, victorious shout. "Bring forth Mjolnir. Let the sacred hammer be placed directly in my bride's lap as a holy blessing to solemnize our glorious marriage. Let it bind us forever." A sudden profound hush fell over the vast hall, a silence pregnant with expectation. This was it. This was the moment they had risked everything for, the culmination of their daring, desperate gambit. Two massive giants, their brutish faces contorted with exertion, struggled under the immense, almost palpable weight, dragging forth the legendary hammer. Its familiar, unmistakable form, the sturdy, rune-etched handle, the polished, battle-worn head, the ancient runes glowing faintly with an almost divine, latent power, slowly emerged into view from behind a curtain. Thor's heart, which had been a drum of suppressed rage, profound humiliation, and gnawing anxiety, now pounded with a different, more potent rhythm, a surge of pure, unadulterated longing, an instinctual recognition. His eyes, though still partially veiled, fixed with an almost desperate intensity on the weapon that was not merely a tool, but an extension of his very soul. He felt the familiar, undeniable pull, the powerful resonance of his own power reaching out to its twin. Its other half, the hammer, was laid gently, almost reverently, upon the lap of the veiled figure. A hush, thick with a shared, collective anticipation, settled over the entire hall. For a fleeting, breathless moment, all eyes, every single giant's gaze, were fixed squarely on, and in that crucial, breathtaking, heart-stopping instant, something utterly extraordinary, utterly cataclysmic, happened. The very moment Mjolnir, the most powerful weapon in the Nine Realms, touched Thor, a transformation, swift and absolute, occurred. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a torrent of pent-up power, of unleashed frustration, of unadulterated, righteous fury that had been held in check for too long. The delicate bridal veil, the shimmering, restrictive gown, the demure, forced posture, all shattered, ripped apart by an explosion of sheer divine power. With a primal roar that echoed through the very stones of Jotunheim, a sound that was less human and more elemental, the earth-shattering sound of a god reclaiming his essence, his true form, Thor tore off the veil. His eyes no longer merely burning, but blazing with the raw, untamed power of a thunderous storm, fixed with a deadly, unwavering intensity on Thrym. In one swift, impossibly powerful motion, he seized Mjolnir, its sturdy handle fitting perfectly, effortlessly, into his mighty grasp. A powerful return to destiny, a reunion long overdue. The hall erupted not in chaos, but in pure, unadulterated pandemonium. The disguise, the profound humiliation, the meticulous deception it all evaporated in a blind. The god of thunder, finally gloriously unleashed from his ridiculous, demeaning bindings, stood before them, a towering, terrifying figure of absolute, unchallengeable power. The feast, moments before a scene of boisterous, drunken celebration, became, in a horrifying instant, a slaughterhouse. Thrym, frozen for a single agonizing heartbeat in utter, petrified shock and dawning, gut-wrenching horror, barely registered the impending doom before Mjolnir, singing its terrible, beautiful song of destruction, crashed down upon his colossal head. The king of the frost giants, the architect of this grand deception, was obliterated in a single, earth-shattering blow, his reign of arrogance and insolence ending in a brutal, conclusive instant. But Thor's fury, a primal, divine rage was not sated. The indignities he had suffered, the profound shame he had endured, the sheer insult of the entire charade fueled a rampage unlike any seen before, a storm of vengeance. Mjolnir became a blur of righteous, unyielding vengeance, a whirlwind of swift, devastating death. One by one, the giants who had dared to mock him, who had dared to steal his most precious hammer, who had dared to anticipate a goddess as their bride, fell before his unleashed wrath. He struck down every single giant in the hall, their crude ice-forged weapons proving utterly useless. Mere toys against the unstoppable fury of a god scorned, a god avenged. Their boastful laughter, their drunken cheers, turned to piercing, terrified screams, their revelry to a bloodbath of unimaginable proportions. He slew Thrym's sister, who, in her greed, had dared to brazenly ask for Freya's wedding rings as a bridal gift, and every other giant who had been present at the grotesque mockery of a wedding, leaving none alive to tell the tale. The hall, moments before a scene of vibrant, if barbaric celebration, was now a tomb, awash in the blood of giants, silent save for the dripping of gore, when the last echo of Mjolnir's devastating impact faded into the heavy, blood-soaked air. A profound silence descended once more. But this was a silence born of absolute, utter obliteration, of complete and total victory. Thor, still breathing heavily, his mighty chest heaving with the aftermath of his righteous rampage, stood amidst the wreckage, his golden hair wild and unbound, his eyes still alight with the residual, crackling energy of the storm he had unleashed. Mjolnir, now once again an undeniable part of him, pulsed with a triumphant, resonant hum, a song of reunion and victory. The mission, against all odds, was accomplished. But the vivid, haunting memory of the bridal gown, the stifling veil, the feigned demureness fey, it would forever be etched into his legend, a testament to the extraordinary, almost unimaginable lengths he would go to protect Asgard and reclaim his undisputed power. Loki, who had witnessed the full, terrifying scope of the carnage from a prudent, safe distance, approached his brother, a rare, almost genuine look of awe, and perhaps a touch of profound, visceral fear in his emerald eyes. He knew his brother's legendary temper, but this was a spectacle of divine wrath fully unleashed, a terrifying, unstoppable display of power that even the cunning deception had worked with spectacular, brutal efficiency, but the emotional cost for Thor's pride had been immense, immeasurable. Yet, in this moment of raw power and brutal justice, there was also a profound sense of catharsis, a release of accumulated tension and indignity. The journey back to Asgard was silent, but it was a silence born not of dread. Thor, clad once more in his glorious armor, Mjolnir safely, securely back in his mighty hand, was a god transformed. He had endured the ultimate humiliation, faced his greatest fears of emasculation, and emerged not just victorious, but perhaps subtly, profoundly changed. This wasn't just a simple tale of a lost hammer and a clever trick. It was a profound, almost philosophical exploration of identity, of honor, of unwavering sacrifice. It powerfully demonstrated that true strength isn't merely found in the might of one's arm or the devastating power of one's weapon, but in the unwavering willingness to humble oneself, to set aside personal pride and vanity for the immeasurable greater good. It starkly revealed the depths of Thor's absolute, unshakable commitment to Asgard, a commitment so profound, so absolute, that he would willingly debase himself, suffer unimaginable indignity, all to reclaim what was essential for the very survival and flourishing of his beloved realm. This epic tale, often recounted with a knowing chuckle, carries a far deeper, more resonant. It powerfully reminds us that even gods, beings of immense, awe-inspiring power and divine essence, are not immune to the cruel trials of fate, nor are they above embracing the uncomfortable, often humiliating, truths of self-sacrifice. It brilliantly illustrates the cunning and ingenuity required to navigate a world teeming with formidable adversaries, and the surprising, often unexpected Thor, the unyielding, archetypal warrior, found himself in the most unwarrior, like most profoundly undignified predicament imaginable, only to emerge hammer once again firmly in hand, a living testament not just to his unbreakable spirit, but also to a newfound, deeper understanding of his own limitations and the surprising, potent power of strategic, albeit utterly humiliating. This tale doesn't just entertain, it compels us to ponder the true, multifaceted meaning of power, the immense weight of a warrior's honor, and the surprising, enduring resilience of a god forced to wear a wedding dress to save his world. That is all for today's video. If you liked this deep dive into one of Norse mythology's most bizarre, most epic, and most surprisingly profound tales, please remember your engagement truly helps us bring more incredible myths and fascinating legends to life for everyone to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.